Okay, let's see another case of oversubscription. So in the earlier one, the case 1 that we saw that the oversubscribed portion was rejected by the directors. Just to revisit the facts once again, there was an issue of 10,000 shares at the rate of 100 per share. There were 15,000 applications which were received by the company, and the amount paid on application was rupees 60 per share. Okay. The amount due on application, allotment, first call and second call is mentioned here respectively. Now, if you see, what has happened is that you have received 60 per share. So let's take the case 2. Case 2 is when proportionate allotment is made. Okay, so let's say there were 3 shareholders. Instead of this, just to make it a bit easy, let's say you had A, B, C. Each one of them applied 5,000 shares. Okay. Now, because the total number of shares was 10,000, a proportionate allotment was done. Right? So they applied for 15,000 and the number of shares allotted to them was proportionate, which is, I'll work it out for one, and for the others 5,000 you applied into 10,000 divided by 15,000. Now you must be wondering, how have I got these things? So for every 10,000 shares there was an application for 15,000 shares, right? So for every one share, sorry, I think I've taken it the reverse way. Let me do these calculations a bit downwards. So 15,000 shares were applied for. So for every 15,000 shares, there were 10,000 shares which was available. This is applied. This is available. So if you applied 15,000, there were 10,000. So if one would have applied 1, it would have been 10,000 upon 15,000. And if you applied for 5,000, what you get is 10, or rather 2 upon 3. 2 upon 3 into 5,000. Right? Which gives you 333.33. Now normally you cannot get shares in fraction, so what we will do is we'll assume it at 333 for 2 and 33334 for one of the shareholders. You can't get shares in fractional shares. So the allotment will be something like this, or 3333. So this is the number of shares which are allotted. Now on these many number of shares, if these were allotted, the amount due was, how much was the amount due? It was 40 into the number of shares allotted, right? So if you multiply 40 with this, what do you get? Let me do the multiplication. So the amount due comes to 133,320 for this guy, 133,320 for this guy, and 133,360. Why 60? Because he's got one extra share. And the amount paid by them is how much? 60 into 5,000, which is 1,50,000 each. Paid is simple. You paid 60 per share, and how many shares did you subscribe for? 5,000. Sorry, it's not 60 into this much. It's actually 3 lakh. So there was an excess payment by all these people. Okay. So now what happens? Whatever is the excess payout by all these people, which is the difference between these two numbers, I'll just clear it a little bit from this side to make it a little simpler. Please excuse me for making this column on this side. So the excess money received is how much? 3 lakh minus this, so it is 166 680 for this, 166 680 for this, and 166 640 for this guy. Okay. Which will be effectively 500,000. So there are two ways in which this can be dealt with. Now you've done your computations. Okay. So the amount due, if you do the total, it should ideally come to 4 lakh. This should be 9 lakh. Okay. So once this is done, how does it work? What are the entries which are done? I'll just try to make small entries here so that you keep a track of. So now basically what will happen here is that first thing was you had share application money due, so you write bank account debit to share application money. How much did you receive? You got 9 lakh. Right, so this is the first entry. The second entry is that 4 lakh was due towards share application, so you debit share application account and transfer this to share capital, which is 4 lakh. Okay. Now what happens to this 5 lakh? There are two things that can be done. Either you refund this, what we saw in the first one. If you refund this, then the entry will be what? You initially credited this to the share application account, so you debit share application account by 500,000 to bank account. Or the other option is you can adjust this, adjust excess, in fact I should use a different color here, money towards calls. So instead of debiting this bank account, you would proportionately see what is the amount of call on allotment. Allotment, you have 30,000 shares at the rate of for 10,000 shares. So instead of crediting this, you can simply do first call account. How much was that? 3 lakh. Now what do I see? I see that it is 5 lakh. So there is further 2 lakh amount which is left. Again, you have an option to refund this. Sorry, this is not first allotment. This is actually allotment. Or you can take it towards first call, 1,50,000. But even then you are left with 50,000. So you can either refund it or adjust it towards second and final call, 50,000. Now proportionately, you will not receive any amount in either of these three cases. Individually, you'll have to manage the adjustment between these three people. Okay.